Hold up, Diddy. Hit him with part two, son.
Yo, welcome back to another episode of 1320 Stuff. It's your boy RJ here. I'm here with Pastor Darryl and all of his crew from previous episodes. And this episode is basically about being a black man in America. So we're just gonna have some candid conversation on what that looks like, what it feels like, what it used to be like compared to what it is today. We have our studio audience. There's so many people in here. Lindsey and Resheida, they're gonna be throwing out some questions for us. So we just here to have some conversation. So I guess we're going to go ahead and get it kicked off on basically what we feel like it means to be a black man in America. So we're going to start with Pastor Q.
I think for me, what it means to be a black man in America, I think is kind of living in this threefold tension, where we were, where we are, and where we're going.
Yeah. So I started with him.
So I think for me, being a black man, I do feel the weight of, kind of representation, right? Honoring the generations that were before me. But there's also this pressure of, the stress that we live with stress every day that we don't even realize the weight of it and really just how heavy it is. So there's this weight. I mean, it's great. There's things I love about being a black man, but there's things that are very stressful about it at the same time.
What are some of the stressful things about being a black man? I'm pretty sure I know, but I'd rather you verbalize that.
I think I mentioned honoring generations that have gone before us, but sometimes the weight of feeling like you're the representation becomes heavy, right? So if I'm in a setting that is non-black, then you feel this unconscious weight of, I gotta put a certain foot forward because they're gonna think, oh, them black men, and then I'm from Chicago, so it's like the whole stigma of Chicago as well, right? So you're always feeling this weight of being the representative. That becomes stressful. There's simple things. If a police officer is behind me more than 2 blocks, instinctively, there's this 10, okay, I'm making sure my hands are 10 and 2 on the... Right. Right, you're always looking. It's all,
yeah.
So just little things like that you don't realize. And it's funny, I was doing an interview with a podcast with a white business podcaster, and he said that, I mentioned that, he had another black friend who mentioned that, and he said, as white men, he's never heard any white men talk about tensing up when the police are behind, or even in the vicinity.
The stress,
right.
The stress of even having to watch your surroundings that much.
Yeah.
To where we notice blocks away where a cop car is, stuff like that. But I think part of the stressor of being black in America, or just black in America, is the ultimate exercise of code switching for every environment that we walk into. So, and people think normally the main example is the corporate environment, but it's every environment that we walk into where we have to code switch accordingly to adapt and adjust to that environment for the comfort of the people in that environment.
Kind of piggyback what you said off the police is like, it's not even just the police, it's just, let's feel like you got to make everybody else comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I'm a bigger guy, I'm 6'2", you know what I'm saying? It's like, when I'm working downtown, I have to make sure, like, as I'm walking, if me and the white lady are kind of on the same cadence, I slow myself down
to not feel threatened.
So I'm not following her. And it's like, I find myself doing things like that all the time. It's like, if I'm going in an elevator, like, I make sure I'm like hugging the wall. Or,
I wait taking this elevator.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that too. You know what I'm saying? I think it's always being on guard. And I'm gonna butcher the quote, but I know James Baldwin said something like, being a black man is being angry all the time.
To be a black man in America is living a constant state of rage. Yeah.
I appreciate y'all.
Okay.
And I think it's feeling like you have to do all that. Like you have to make yourself small sometimes. Like you have to represent your whole race and be that voice of, or be that, okay, this is what blackness is to all these coworkers, that I'm the only black person here. It's lot. It's a burden.
I would even, just real quick, I want to piggyback on that because when you said having to feel small, right? And sometimes not always having to feel small. I think sometimes it's even just always having to make sure everyone feels that you're not a threat. And not just white people, right? But it's even around other black people, right? I mean, just being a black man in America, there's a stereotype that we are thug and that we're angry, we're gonna rob, kill, and steal. So everywhere we go, we feel like someone is watching us. So I have to always make sure that someone else feels safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Studio audience, got questions.
Do you always feel black? Because I think that there is this group thought of like blackness is this, and like we're always black, and I feel so black. And if I'm honest, as a black person, I'm not always consciously feeling black. Do you all ever have a time where you're not thinking all these thoughts, or is this always?
Always, for me.
Not for me. Right now, I don't.
Yeah, like,
I wonder why.
if I'm in a majority black space, then I don't feel black. I'm cool. You know what I'm saying? Until a cop shows up or somebody, you know what I'm saying? Like, then there goes the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think when you're amongst family and friends, you just feel regular. But when you're out in society, it's instant. Yeah. And to maybe I think it was your point earlier, like I really hate being a representation for in the workspace. Like I'm working corporate America. Everybody's mostly white. You know, then you see me, and I come in. And people tell me I don't always look like approachable. So now I got to snap into this space where I'm putting a smile on my face, being the first one to speak, the whole elevator scene and all of that stuff. And I'm just like, I'm probably the nicest, but then when they get to know me, then I'm like a god to them, you know, but it's everything that they think before based off the color of my skin. I'm like, bro, even in airports too, it's like, and then you got to put in overtime in airports because all our cousins being there, you know, with the bonnets and being drunk and belligerent. And so it's like, oh man, I'm so embarrassed. And I was just in, Miami a couple weeks ago, and you know, weather issues, and there were some delays. And so this one guy was in the airport since 5 a.m. Now we didn't leave till about 2 p.m., but his flight was supposed so he's been in the airport all day drinking, coming back to Chicago. So he's causing ruckus all throughout the airport, and by the time it's time to get on the plane, so I get on first, because I will a lady on there so I can be one of those people to get my seat first. And I give the stewardess a head up. I feel like I had to give the stewardess a head up, like, yo, we got some people coming, you know, it might be a little, you know, but it's gonna be cool. I had to pre-warn her that but they didn't even let them get on the plane. They was just too crazy.
I don't feel black until the ones that have labeled me black come into the space. Mm-hmm. We didn't label ourselves as somebody else labeled us, and you don't feel that until they show up. And just, you know, in our fair day is white or, you know, part of society that they show up and you're like, oh dang, I'm black. You know, and so yeah, that's when you feel it.
So when we talk about being black in America or black men in America, I think that we always automatically go to the difficulties of being black in America. As a black man, do you recognize or feel that you have privilege in spaces? Do you ever feel the privilege of being a man or being a black man?
I do. Because, like, I would never want to be white. Because, like, white people so fluffy. I do. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, white people so white, man. They're so white bread. And, like, I couldn't be white. I love having rhythm. I love, like, I love the shared experience of blackness. I love the beauty of blackness. I love being part of that, being part of something different. Almost like a foreigner in this land. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like we just a whole different thing. I love everything about it, man. I couldn't imagine myself just being some white dude watching Friends and walking my dog, and you know.
I couldn't imagine watching Friends, period. But
yeah.
But yeah, I think I don't associate the word privilege. I think there are things that I guess if I would say privilege, in the sense of I feel like there's a baton that's been handed to me, right, as a black man, and my job is to run my leg of the race and run it well. But to Jason's point, I'm sorry, Justin or Jason, the culture piece. I mean, I love Black culture, right?
So dope.
I remember I saw the movie recently, High on the Hog, you know, the series, right? And I was just like, you know, stuff like Black food, like, so it took me back to my mom's kitchen, my grandmother's kitchen, you know, my aunt's in Georgia, right? And just little things like that. So, you know, white folk don't have grits wars. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Just little things like that, it's just dope being Black, you know?
Just one more. And one thing, it's just like having that shared experience where it's like, it could be a Black man from anywhere in this country. And for the most part, it's like, if some nonsense going on, I can make eye contact and be like,
Yeah, the nod.
Like,
The nod.
Yeah,
The nod.
and like that's dope to me. You know what I'm saying? Like other cultures don't have that.
You know, I think for me, I walk with a different level of confidence as a Black man, not because I'm not white, but because of where I've come from. So, and I mention this all the time because I used to be ashamed of it. And when I was in high school, I wouldn't make additional friends because I lived in the projects. I didn't want people to know because that made me less than. So, but now I take that and I value that because it shaped me into who I am now. So it brought me from living in poverty and not having much of anything to a point where I feel, you know, and I don't say I feel, I am successful. And so I walk with this level of confidence because what I used to be, I'm not that anymore. So for me, it has nothing to do with being Black versus white. It's just like where I've come from into where I am, and I know where I'm going. So
I would just say, I wouldn't use the word privilege, but there is a sense of Black pride. I think, and that's kind of what everyone is describing, right? We feel proud to be who we are, despite all that we may face in America. Yeah. We feel proud that we are who we are, that we come from where we come from, and even that we're achieving what we're able to achieve.
Absolutely.
I think y'all miss the privilege of being a Black man because when I think about from a desirability standpoint, Black men, if we talk in food chain, I think are at the top as far as desirability.
Desirability romantically.
Or like, I think that when you think about strength, when you think about power, when you think about masculinity and attractiveness, Black men are at the top of the list for any race.
So I think the caveat for me is that when you're talking about desirability in a romantic context, there may be some validity there, right? But if you're not in a professional context, we're at the bottom of the chain in terms of desirability. We are going back to the examples earlier, which every one of us could give an example. In a business setting, corporate setting, airport, prior to the pandemic, I was on a plane every week. And so I would be intentional when I first started traveling regularly. I always wore a jacket. Even if I had on a t-shirt like this, I always wear a jacket to the airport because of profiling, because of things like that, right? So no matter what, if I had on jeans, gym stuff, I'm throwing a jacket on just because that gives at least some level of appearance of professional. So I think the desirability is offset by the profile.
No, white people have white privilege, but he just called them corny. They don't have no rhythm work, but they still have a privilege. I think that y'all are missing the privilege of being a Black man and the fact that if you are broke, Black men still got swag.
Well, I think the thing too is
you still could be that. A broke white man is what?
You gotta consider though that in 2021, the Black man has been beaten to such a degree that in talking to Black men, it's difficult for us to see privilege. Okay?
I get that.
So we have to pull at that because our top layers are always going to be the trauma. It's always going to be all this turmoil. I probably see privilege in the sense that being a Black man is you are endowed with certain just gifts that no one else simply possesses. And I think it's not just Black men, but Black women as well, Black people, but Black men specifically have a weird ability to consistently come out of crap.
Yeah, absolutely.
And figure it out. Now, some of them, some of us is broken and we jacked up, but for the most part, we figure out how to come out of crap. And that in itself is a privilege. And we come out of crap without pulling someone else into it.
And the trauma from the crap, I think, is still attractive. It's like Black men, this level of potential aggression or like over masculinity, it still can be attractive. I think Black women, when we come out of trauma, the trauma that we bring is unattractive. It ends up working against us. What the trauma creates in us is unattractive versus
only a rung up. We ain't.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
I think that's,
It's nuanced, very nuanced.
yeah, it's very, like, I mean, I think that maybe because women have the desire to like cover the black man to help them to save when they see somebody hurt, they want to pick them up, brush them off, and say, man, you know, go back out there and get them. And I don't know if we have that. You know, I don't. And again, but and like I don't call it a feminine black man of a black man. I just think that women are nurturing, are more affectionate, are more. I think that maybe we have to build up such a hard. We feel like we have to build up such a hard exterior. We try not to show weakness or try to reward weakness, maybe. But like, no, that's a interesting point though.
I would say I understand your point, and I believe that we do see our strength, right? We do see our value and our worth. But in the context of being black in America, we don't feel that from America as a whole, right? So although we may know our value, we know our worth, America doesn't make us feel that way. Everything that you're describing, even our strength, right, to someone else that's intimidating, which is what makes us then feel we have to make sure that they're not intimidated.
So let me go back to this desirability piece real quick, right? So for instance, when you talk about romantic desirability, that black men are desired, and I know that there's been a lot of conversations, I'm sure y'all have kind of heard about black men and non-black women and all that, how women have always like black men. I'm sure you're right. But okay, let's go back historically. Paint the historical context of that. Black men have always been desired by even women that were not black, but there's also this objectification that happened of both black men and black women. The difference is in slavery, and even in, I would argue, in Jim Crow era, the objectification of black women and black men was different because black men were considered this savage threat, right? So for instance, a lot of race riots, well, not even race riots, but assault on black lives historically, you read things like the summer 1919, they happened because all you gotta do to start an attack of white people on black people is say, a black man attacked a white woman and all hell breaks loose, it's going up, right? But the reality is historically, it was always as white men being the aggressor of black women. Historically in slavery, it wasn't the biracial babies and the mulattoes that happened in slavery wasn't because white women was giving birth to babies that had with black men. It was because black women were raped by white men and their bodies were brutalized and they gave birth to mulatto babies. But yet there's this objectification that the black men just have this insatiable control, and we got to protect the pristine white women like they see in like the movie Birth of Another Nation, all that foolishness. So I think this desirability is offset by things like that.
So let me shift a little bit. We're talking about black men in America. Why is it that majority of us as black men have this crabs in a barrel mentality where we don't want to see other brothers succeed? We only come together when it's something that the white people have done to us. But we don't support one another, we don't uplift, we don't push each other because we're too busy trying to get it for ourselves, not knowing that if we come together, we can all get it. Why? And I'm pretty sure it has something to do with, generations and how things used to be. But at what point do we break that mentality to say, hey, no, we can be stronger together as opposed to always tearing each other down and pulling each other back?
In a word, scarcity. And black people in America, we are taught to live from a scarcity mentality. So if you get a piece of pie, there's not really, because we're taught y'all only gonna get one slice, right? Just like we've seen black people. It's one pie for all of y'all. So if you get something, that's less for you. When the reality is, let's skip talking about getting a slice of pie. Let's learn how to get the bacon, right? And so I think that would be one thing.
And that's the thing. So you asked how do you overcome that? I don't know how easily that's done because of the fact that the context hasn't changed. And one of the things, I went to Cape Town, South Africa some years ago, and the guy that was there was telling us about, when we were brought over on slave ships and, all that stuff. And so somebody asked questions and said, well, how did that happen? White people just came over and took us. He said, no, they had a deal with one of the tribes there, right? And so Liddy asked this question. She said, well, in Africa, aren't there more black people than white people? I said, yeah. She said, why didn't take over? And he said, because in that time, in that context, apartheid and all that stuff, they had done such an day, I think the only answer to that question is are things that we would assume aren't dividers, but they are. It is the luxury brands, it is the status, it is all these things that continue to separate. So you got a black man looking at a black man like, how he get that? And why he got that? Why can't I get that? And then you got to look down on each other because one is educated and the other's not. So I think somewhere along the line, the system has to be completely demolished. By who? I don't know. How? I don't know. But until that happens, the context will change.
I mean, yeah, I don't think that there can be any change without resources. Because I think that once we kind of kill the scarcity aspect, and people start realizing, like, oh, we both can eat. Okay, now when we can eat, let's all sit down at the table together and come up with some plans. But as long as everybody feels like every dollar they grab, they got to hold on to it because another dollar might not come, it's always going to be that competition, that fight. And again, like, I feel like a lot of times it's put on as like a failing of black people, but any people that's in this situation, any person. Yeah, any person.
You put 1,000 people in a building that's 10 stories and squeeze them together.
Yeah. And we have the most under-leveraged economy of any demographic group in this nation. Our dollars circulate the least amongst ourselves. I think one of the truths, and I mean I can say this in this context, I don't say this in every context, we were hurt a lot by desegregation.
Absolutely.
Factually, right?
Absolutely.
Because what happened is the accomplishments that happened in the Civil Rights Act of '64 and the Voting Rights Act of '65, apart from the tangible benefit of voting, the Accommodations Act was a psychological victory, but not an economic victory. Because the adverse effect of that was now black folk are dispersing their dollars because we had to eat at Miss Sally's Cafe because we couldn't go to Ruth's Chris. We had to stay at so-and-so's hotel because we couldn't go to Hilton and Marriott. And so now those businesses, because we had also been fed this myth that the white man's ice is always colder, we now disperse our dollars in places that they were not dispersed to before. So the circulation of the dollar that happened in communities prior to 1965 was not happening. And then when you have the whole Housing Act, that created a whole other dynamic.
And that's the reason they gave voting and not anything else.
Correct.
Because voting was the easy thing to give, and it's something that I believe they knew then we could change this later.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but
And it also benefited a specific group in the white power structure.
Yeah, but if we give them economic freedom, we can't pull that back later. Because when they reach, if this group reaches a point, there's a point that we're not going to be able to stop.
It's a tipping point, absolutely.
But we'll give them policy all day long. Because we can change that one out.
Oh, I had a question. So, there's a term now, toxic masculinity. And since I work in the TV business, they often talk about how it's basically trying to eradicate the alpha man. How does that translate?
What is toxic? Eradicate the alpha male? What do you mean?
Toxic masculinity, patriarchy. How does that translate in the black male community? Because I know many times when I'm like pitching stuff for black men, they just think it's so toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of breeds from upbringing.
I believe that is a double-edged sword that has cut black men in 1,000 pieces. One of the disservices, now I do believe that there is some toxicity, and I'm not saying that there's not gender bias. But I think one of the things that has happened is in this attempt to, America's always been threatened by a strong black man. Right? And so now I think what we have to do is deconstruct this notion of what real power is. So when we talk about toxic masculinity, a man's power is not defined in his ability to dominate a woman.